She lived in a small, worn-out house on the edge of a town that seemed to forget people like her. The walls were cracked, the roof leaked when it rained, and the floors were uneven, but it was all she could afford. Every morning, she woke up to the sound of roosters crowing and the smell of smoke from distant chimneys. Her days were spent working hard for almost nothing, and her nights were full of quiet tears that no one would see. She had dreams once, big dreams that seemed possible when she was younger. But life had a way of pushing them away, bit by bit. She was in love with a man who was gentle, kind, and full of hope. They had met when he had come to town to work on a small construction project, and somehow, amidst all the dust and labor, they found a bond that felt unshakable. They dreamed together, laughed together, and promised each other that no matter what, they would stay side by side. But life, as it often does, had other plans. One morning, she noticed he was unusually pale. His usual energy was gone, replaced with weakness that made him struggle to get out of bed. At first, she thought it was just fatigue. Maybe the heavy work had worn him down. But as days passed, his condition worsened. He could barely eat, and sometimes he would faint while trying to stand. Fear began to take root in her heart. She knew something was seriously wrong. They went to the local clinic, a small place with peeling paint and tired doctors. The tests revealed the truth she had been dreading. He was seriously ill. The treatment he needed was expensive, far beyond what they could afford. Every prescription, every test, every doctor's visit carried a price tag that made her stomach ache. She tried to find work, any work, but the jobs paid so little, and the bills kept piling up. She sold what little she had, borrowed money from neighbors, even skipped meals. But it was never enough. One evening, as she sat on the floor of their tiny home, holding his hand and watching him struggle to breathe, a wealthy couple arrived in a shiny car. They had heard of her situation through some mutual acquaintances, and they offered her a deal she could hardly believe. They wanted to adopt her unborn child, and in exchange, they would give her enough money to pay for her lover's medical care. She felt the ground drop beneath her. The couple spoke in calm, convincing tones, painting pictures of a bright future for the baby, with a loving home, education, and comfort she could never provide. But all she could think of was the impossible choice laid before her. Her heart screamed no, but the fear of losing the man she loved kept her silent that night. She sat alone, staring at the empty corner of their home. She imagined the baby growing up in a house she couldn't afford, wearing clothes she couldn't buy, eating meals she could never provide. And then she thought of him, lying in bed, pale and frail, waiting for her to find a solution. She felt trapped in a cruel nightmare, where every choice led to heartbreak. She had always believed in love, in fighting for what mattered most, but this felt different. This was no ordinary fight. It was a battle between her heart and her reality. She thought about her own childhood, the days she had gone hungry, the nights she had cried alone. She remembered the stories of mothers in her family who had sacrificed everything for their children. And yet, here she was, faced with the possibility that she might have to give away her own child to save the life of the man she loved. Days passed, and her belly grew round with life she couldn't keep. Every kick, every movement reminded her of the impossible choice she had to make. She imagined holding the baby in her arms, smelling the soft new skin, feeling the warmth of a life that was hers yet could never stay. The thought made her cry, but she also felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. If she didn't make this choice, the man she loved might die. She tried to find another solution. She asked for help from relatives, from friends, from neighbors, but no one could give her enough money. She pawned her few belongings, worked from dawn to dusk, and still, the hospital bills loomed over them like a dark cloud. Every day, she watched him grow weaker, and every day, her heart broke a little more. One evening, the couple returned. They spoke gently, patiently, as though they understood her hesitation. They promised that the baby would have a life she could only dream of, and that she could see the child whenever she wanted. They made it sound like a choice, but deep down, she knew it was a lifeline for the man she loved. She stayed awake that night, her mind racing, her body exhausted. She thought about the first time she had seen him smile. the first time he had held her hand, the first time they had whispered promises of forever. Could she betray that love by letting go of the child? The next morning, she made the hardest decision of her life. She would give away her baby, believing it was the only way to save the man she loved. When the couple came to take the child, she held the baby close, pressing her lips to the soft hair, breathing in the tiny scent that would stay with her forever. She whispered apologies, whispered love, whispered promises that she could never keep. And then, with trembling hands, she let go. The baby was taken away, wrapped in soft blankets, smiling in a way that broke her heart even more. She stood there alone, staring at the empty arms that had once been full of life, and felt a pain that cut deeper than anything she had ever known. She wanted to scream, to cry, to run after them, but she knew she couldn't. She had made her choice. After the baby was gone, she returned home to the man she loved, clutching the money that could save his life. She watched him sleep, thinking about the future they could have. But every smile, every moment of relief was shadowed by the absence of the child she had given away. She tried to tell herself that she had done the right thing, that love sometimes meant impossible choices. But every night when the house was quiet, the tears came, unbidden and endless. The days turned into weeks. The man recovered slowly, the treatments helping him regain some strength. But the woman could never forget the small life she had given away. She would see mothers with their children in the market, in the park, even in the street, and her heart would ache with longing. She knew she had saved the man she loved, but the cost was the life she could have shared with her own child. Sometimes, she would dream of the baby, imagining the small hands reaching for hers, imagining the tiny voice calling her name. In those dreams, she could feel the warmth, the closeness, the love that was taken from her. And when she woke, the emptiness was unbearable. Life moved forward, as it always does, but she could never move past that moment. The choice she had made haunted her, shaping her days, coloring her nights, and leaving a shadow on every joy she tried to feel. She had given life to save love, but in doing so, she had lost part of herself that could never be reclaimed. And so, she lived quietly, working hard, caring for the man she loved, and carrying a secret sorrow that no one could ever understand. Every decision, every step, every thought was touched by that moment of impossible choice. She had given up a part of her soul, but she had done it for love. Even as years passed, the memory of that small life remained vivid, a constant reminder of sacrifice and heartbreak. She would never forget the child, never stop longing, and never cease to wonder about the life she had given away. And somewhere deep inside, she held on to hope that one day, she might see that child again, and perhaps, just perhaps, find a way to heal the wound that had never truly closed. After the baby was gone, life felt both lighter and heavier at the same time. The woman had done what she believed was necessary to save the man she loved, but the emptiness inside her chest never left. Every corner of the small home seemed to whisper reminders of what had been taken from her. She tried to focus on the present, on helping the man regain his strength. But the shadow of that day loomed over everything. The man began to recover slowly. The money she had received allowed him to get proper treatment, and the doctors were optimistic. He smiled more often now, and his laughter, though fragile, returned to the home. She watched him with a mixture of relief and pain. Relief that he was alive, that her sacrifice had worked. Pain because every beat of her heart longed for the child she had given away. It was as if she was living two lives at once, one filled with hope and recovery, the other hollowed out by loss and guilt. At first, she tried to bury her grief. She told herself she had no right to cry, no right to mourn, because she had made a choice for love. She worked harder, cleaned more, cooked more, and gave herself to his care completely. But grief has a way of finding cracks in even the strongest armor. When she thought no one was looking, she would sit on the floor, knees drawn to her chest, and let the tears fall. She whispered the child's name into the silence, though she wasn't even sure she remembered it correctly. Each tear was a confession of her sorrow, a release of a pain that no words could ever fix. Outside, the world went on without pause. Neighbors celebrated birthdays, went to weddings, and laughed with children running through the streets. She watched them from the cracked window of her home, feeling both joy and despair. Joy for the life she had glimpses of, despair for the life that had slipped through her fingers. She sometimes imagined the child growing up somewhere far away, wearing fine clothes, eating well, and sleeping in soft beds. And still, she wondered, would the child ever remember her? Would the child ever feel the love she had left behind? The man, now healthier, tried to return to his work. He insisted on carrying the burden of life again, but she refused to let him. She worked more than ever, taking on odd jobs, cleaning homes, washing clothes, anything to make enough money to keep him stable. Every coin she earned reminded her of the price she had paid to save him. She tried to explain to him that she had done something that might one day change everything. But she could never bring herself to say the words out loud. Some truths, she believed, were too heavy to bear, even for someone you loved. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The house, though still modest, felt warmer with the man's presence, his laughter, and the faint hope that life could still hold happiness. But at night when the world went quiet, the memories came back. She remembered the softness of the baby's skin, the warmth of the tiny body in her arms, and the look in the eyes that had been so trusting. She would close her eyes and see that little face, hear that small cry, feel that heartbeat pressed against her own. The grief would swell so much it felt like she could barely breathe. Sometimes she imagined going to find the child. But the thought terrified her. What if the child hated her? What if the child didn't want to see her at all? The wealthy couple had told her the child would be well cared for, loved, and happy. She wanted to believe them, and so she pushed away the longing. Still, no matter how hard she tried, the image of the child never left her mind. It was like a constant companion. Following her through every step of her day, the man noticed her quiet moments and asked what troubled her. She would shake her head, forcing a smile that never reached her eyes, and say everything was fine. But he could see the pain, even if he could not understand it fully. He tried to comfort her, reminding her that they had each other and that the past could not be changed. His words were gentle, but they only made her sorrow sharper. She wanted to tell him the truth, to share the secret she had carried for so long. But she feared it would shatter the fragile peace they were building together. She began to take longer walks in the evening, wandering through the town's empty streets, breathing in the cool night air. She would walk past parks where mothers played with their children, past schools where children laughed and ran, past markets filled with families preparing meals. Everywhere she looked, she saw reminders of what she had given up. And yet in those walks, there was also a strange comfort. The world was still alive, still moving, still offering beauty even to someone like her. She clung to that small hope, even if it was fragile and fleeting. The months passed slowly. She kept working, kept caring for the man, and kept the secret locked in her heart. She found small joys wherever she could. The smell of fresh bread, the sight of a sunrise, the laughter of neighbors. But always, the memory of the child lingered, like a shadow she could not escape. Sometimes, in the quiet of the night, she would dream of the baby running toward her, arms outstretched, and she would wake with a mix of hope and sorrow. Unsure whether it was a dream or a longing made real, then one day news came that shook her. A distant relative who had heard of the baby mentioned that the child was doing well, living in a home full of love and opportunity. The words should have brought her peace, but instead they brought a fresh wave of sorrow. The knowledge that the child was safe and happy made her feel both relief and a painful distance. She had given the baby life and love, yet she was not there to share it. The realization settled deep into her heart, a reminder of the cost of her choice. She thought about the future constantly. She wondered what the child would be like, how the child would grow, and whether the child would ever know the truth. She imagined the child learning about the world, going to school, making friends, and living a life she could never touch. And yet, she held on to a fragile hope that one day, somehow, their paths might cross again. That hope was the only thing that kept her going through the long, lonely nights. Life continued to test her. She faced challenges at work, difficulties in the town, and the ongoing struggle of making ends meet. But through it all, she carried a quiet strength. She had faced the impossible and had chosen love, even when it meant losing something precious. That strength became a part of her, shaping the way she faced every hardship, every obstacle, every sorrow. It was a strength born of heartbreak, but also of hope, and it guided her through the darkest moments. She learned to smile again, sure, even if it was a fragile smile, even if it did not reach her eyes. She learned to find small joys in the little things, the warmth of the sun on her face, the kindness of strangers, the laughter of children she would never know. And though the memory of the child never left her, she found a way to carry it without letting it consume her. It became a part of her story, a part of who she was, and a part of the love that had defined her life. Years passed. The child grew up far away, living in a world she could only imagine. The woman continued her life in the small town, working, loving, and surviving. She never stopped thinking about the child, never stopped wondering what life had become for her. And every day she held on to the hope that one day, the impossible might happen, that she might see the child again, that she might hear the child's voice, and that she might finally find a measure of peace for the love and sacrifice that had defined her life, even in the quietest moments. When the house was empty and the night was still, she would whisper to the memory of the child, telling her everything she had hoped for, everything she had dreamed of, everything she had sacrificed to make life possible. And though the child was far away, and though the years had passed, that whisper was a bridge, a connection, a promise that love, even when tested by the harshest trials, could endure. And so she waited, lived, and loved. Carrying the weight of the past while hoping for the future, she had given everything for love, and though it had cost her more than she could have imagined, she held on to the belief that one day the story was not over. One day the child might return, and the circle of love, sacrifice, and hope might finally be complete. Until then, she would continue to live, to survive, and to believe in the power of a love that had already changed her life forever. Years had passed since. The baby had been taken from her arms, and the world had moved on. But for the child who had grown up in wealth, life was only beginning to reveal its truths. She had been raised in comfort, with every need provided for, yet a quiet restlessness lived inside her. From the outside, her life seemed perfect. A large house, loving adoptive parents, excellent education, and friends who envied her for her opportunities. But despite all of it, a subtle emptiness lingered, unshakable feeling that something important was missing. It began with small things. Sometimes she would look in the mirror and catch a glimpse of herself, wondering who she really was. She would see her eyes, her hands, the way she smiled, and feel a strange sense of not fully belonging. She loved her parents, but deep down, she had questions she didn't yet know how to ask. They had always told her that she had been adopted because they wanted to give her a life she deserved. They said they had chosen her out of love and luck, painting it as a beautiful story of care and opportunity. Yet the story felt incomplete. Something about it did not sit right with her. On her 18th birthday, she received a folder from the family lawyer, a simple envelope that contained official documents. She opened it with curiosity, expecting perhaps an extra gift or a note, but instead found papers that changed her world. Adoption papers, hospital records, and correspondence between the adoptive parents and a young mother. Documents that revealed she had not just been adopted by chance. The truth began to unfold in quiet, shocking whispers. She had been born to a woman who could not afford to care for her, a mother who had made a heart-wrenching choice to let her go. She was bought, or so it seemed at first, in exchange for the medical care of someone the mother loved. The shock left her numb. She read and reread the documents, unable to believe what she saw. She had been loved and raised in comfort, but the foundation of her life felt suddenly complicated. She had questions, so many questions, and no one could fully answer them. Her adoptive parents tried to explain, telling her that the mother had acted out of love and desperation, that she had made the ultimate sacrifice to protect her child. They spoke gently, carefully, as though handling fragile glass. But the words only made her curiosity deeper, her need to find the truth stronger. For days, she could not sleep. She walked through the gardens of the estate, past fountains and marble columns. And yet her thoughts were not on the beauty surrounding her. They were on the small, unknown life she had left behind, the mother who had made an unimaginable choice. She wondered what kind of woman had given her up, what the mother looked like, how she had lived these years without her. Questions multiplied like echoes in her mind, each one louder than the last. Eventually, she decided she could no longer wait. She needed to find her biological mother, not out of anger, but out of a desire to understand. She wanted to see the face of the woman who had sacrificed so much, to hear the voice of the person who had let her go in order to save someone else. The thought was terrifying. What if the mother resented her? What if she did not want to be found? What if she had built a life in which this child, her child, no longer had a place? And yet she could not stop herself. She began to search quietly at first, speaking with relatives, tracing records, following leads, piecing together fragments of information that might point her to the woman she had never known. The search was not easy. The mother had lived a life of quiet struggle, blending into the background of a small town, working hard to survive and supporting the man she loved after recovering from illness. There were no social media accounts, no public profiles, nothing that made the woman's life obvious. But the daughter persisted, driven by a mixture of curiosity, longing, and the hope that meeting her mother would fill the emptiness that had lived inside her for so long. Finally, after weeks of careful inquiry, she found a name and a place, a modest house on the edge of a town that seemed to have forgotten its residents. She approached it slowly, heart pounding, hands trembling, and felt a flood of emotions she had never anticipated. Excitement, fear, hope, anxiety all collided in her chest. She stood there for a long moment, gathering courage, imagining the meeting that would finally answer the questions that had haunted her for years. When she finally knocked on the door, it opened slowly, revealing a woman who looked older than she had imagined. Life had left its mark on the mother's face, faint lines, tired eyes, a softness that came from love and sorrow alike. The moment they saw each other, time seemed to stop. Both women froze, caught in the intensity of a connection neither fully understood, yet immediately recognized. The mother's eyes widened, as though seeing a reflection of herself in another lifetime. The daughter's heart raced as she searched the face before her for any clue, any sign, any trace of the woman who had given her life. The first words were tentative, careful, fragile. I think you were looking for me," the mother said softly, her voice trembling, eyes glistening with unshed tears. The daughter nodded, unable to speak at first, overwhelmed by the weight of the moment. She had imagined this reunion countless times, in dreams, in quiet moments of longing, and yet the reality was far more intense than anything she had imagined. She felt an ache, a joy, a confusion, all at once. The mother stepped back, inviting the daughter inside. They sat across from each other in a small living room, and the silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, the mother began to speak, recounting the story of the past, of the day the baby had been born, of the impossible choice she had made. She spoke of love, of fear, of sacrifice, of the man she loved, and of the child she had given away in order to save a life. Her words were quiet, measured, but full of raw emotion. Every sentence carried the weight of years of pain and longing. The daughter listened, tears streaming down her face, heartbreaking and swelling at the same time. She had always known she had been adopted, but now she understood the depth of the sacrifice. This woman had given her away not because of lack of love, but because of love that could not be contained. Love that had to stretch beyond the boundaries of her own desires. The daughter realized that the emptiness she had felt was not because she was unloved, but because love sometimes required unbearable choices. Questions poured out of her, fast and urgent. Why did you give me away? Did you ever regret it? Did you think of me every day? The mother answered honestly, her voice cracking with emotion. She admitted that every day had been a struggle, every memory of the child a wound that never healed. She had worked, labored, and survived, but nothing could replace the life that had been taken from her arms. And yet she had believed with all her heart that the child would have a life she could never provide on her own. As the conversation continued, the daughter began to see layers she had never imagined. The mother's life had been difficult, marked by sacrifice, by choices that no one else could understand. She had given up everything she loved to protect another, and in doing so had carried a quiet grief that defined her existence. The daughter felt a mix of admiration, sorrow, and connection. She realized that the woman before her was not a stranger, but a reflection of resilience, love, and courage. Days turned into weeks, and the two women spent time together, learning to know each other in ways that went beyond words. They shared memories, hopes, dreams, and regrets. Each story, each laugh, each tear brought them closer. The daughter began to understand the mother's life, and the mother began to see the woman her child had become. There was healing in their connection, a slow but steady weaving of trust and love that neither had expected, yet both desperately needed. The daughter also began to reflect on her own life, her upbringing, and the love she had received from her adoptive parents. She realized that life was not about blame or anger or resentment. It was about understanding, about connection, about the ways in which love could take forms she had never imagined. She saw that both lives the life she had been given and the life she had lost were tied together by love, by sacrifice, and by the threads of destiny that had brought them to this moment. Yet, even as they grew closer, there remained unanswered questions. Secrets still hidden, and truths yet to be revealed. The daughter knew that discovering the full story of her past would not be easy, and that there were moments ahead that might challenge their bond, test their understanding, and force them to confront realities neither had imagined. And so, they prepared together, but cautiously, for the journey that was only just beginning. This reunion was more than a meeting of past and present. It was the start of a story that would unravel mysteries, confront pain, and ultimately bring a deeper understanding of love, sacrifice, and the unbreakable ties that connect a mother and her child. Both women, holding on to hope, courage, and the fragile beauty of newfound connection, began to step into the next chapter of their lives, unaware of the shocking revelations that were still waiting for them just around the corner. The daughter stayed in the small town for weeks, living quietly in a modest guest house nearby, while she spent as much time as she could with her biological mother. Every day brought new layers of understanding, new moments that drew them closer. And yet, there was also an invisible wall between them, a mixture of fear, shame, and the lingering weight of the past. They could speak about small things, the weather, the town, meals, but the larger truths were harder to touch. Words could not fully capture the depth of years lost. The choices made, the love withheld and given in strange, painful forms. The mother watched her daughter carefully, studying the gestures, the expressions, the way she moved through the small home. Every laugh, every smile, every frown was a mirror of someone she had loved once, someone she had held close and then let go. The resemblance was uncanny, not just in features, but in spirit, the determination in her eyes, the gentleness in her voice, the way she observed the world with care and curiosity. There was a sense of familiarity that was almost eerie, yet comforting. It was as though the years had folded back on themselves, allowing them a second chance to understand each other. At first, the conversations were cautious. The daughter asked simple questions about childhood, about the mother's life, about small details of the town. The mother answered slowly, hesitantly, revealing just enough to build trust without overwhelming either of them. She spoke of her early struggles, of days spent working from dawn to dusk, of nights filled with worry and quiet tears. She spoke of the man she had loved and how he had become sick, how she had fought to save him, and how she had made the impossible choice to let her child go. Every word was heavy with meaning, every sentence a piece of a puzzle that was slowly forming before them. The daughter listened intently, absorbing every detail, imagining the world her mother had lived in, the fears she had faced, the courage she had shown. She could feel the weight of the sacrifices, the endless love that had been present even when she was not. At times, she would reach out, touching her mother's hand, feeling the warmth and softness, and silently promising that she had come back not to blame, but to understand. Tears flowed freely during these moments, not of sadness alone, but of recognition, connection, and the relief that comes from finally meeting someone you have longed for without fully knowing why. As the days went on, the walls between them began to crumble. They cooked meals together, shared stories from their lives, and even laughed at small jokes. The mother showed her daughter the small garden she had nurtured over the years, pointing out flowers that reminded her of people, of events, of moments she could never forget. The daughter listened, fascinated by the care and thought behind every detail. She began to understand that life had not been easy for her mother, but it had also been full of love, persistence, and hope. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the sky turned soft shades of orange and pink, the daughter finally asked the question that had been burning inside her from the start. "Why did you give me away?" Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but it carried the weight of years of longing, confusion, and unanswered questions. The mother's hands trembled as she folded them in her lap. She looked down for a moment, collecting her thoughts before meeting her daughter's eyes. "I did it because I loved," the mother said softly. "Not because I didn't love you. Not because I wanted to lose you. I did it because there was no other way. The man I loved was sick, and I had nothing to give, nothing to save him. I thought I could never forgive myself if he died while I held on to you. I thought if I let you go, you would live a life I could never give you, and he would live. It was the hardest decision I have ever made. And even now, every day, I wonder if I did enough." Her voice broke, and tears slid down her cheeks. The daughter reached out, taking her mother's hands in hers, holding them tightly. "I understand," she said. "I don't blame you. I can't even imagine the pain you felt. You loved me in the only way you could at that moment. You saved someone else, and somehow that love reached me too. I am here, aren't I?" The mother nodded, tears flowing freely now, relief mingling with sorrow. They held each other, silent, letting the years of separation, pain, and longing dissolve in the quiet of the evening. For the first time in a long while, the mother felt whole, as though a missing piece of her soul had finally returned. And for the daughter, there was a deep sense of connection, a knowing that love could take unimaginable forms and still endure, even across years of absence. Over the following days, the daughter continued to learn more about her mother's life. She heard stories of small triumphs, of kindness from strangers, of moments when the mother had thought the world had forgotten her, but had found strength anyway. She learned about the sacrifices her mother had made, not just in giving her away, but in living each day with integrity, courage, and hope. Every story added depth to the woman she had come to know. Every detail made her realize the extraordinary resilience behind the quiet life she had lived. The mother, in turn, learned about the daughter's life, about the world she had grown up in, the education she had received, the values instilled by her adoptive parents. She listened with pride and amazement, realizing that, despite the distance, the daughter had grown into a kind, thoughtful, and compassionate person. It was clear that life had given her child opportunities she could never have provided, and yet the bond between them was undeniable, growing stronger with every conversation, every shared smile, every touch of understanding. One afternoon, as they sat in the small garden, the daughter spoke hesitantly. "There's something I need to tell you," she said. The mother looked at her, concerned, sensing the seriousness in her tone. The daughter took a deep breath. "I know you made a choice for love, but I've been thinking, maybe there's more to the story, something we don't yet know." The mother's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I don't know exactly," the daughter admitted. "But there are hints, little things I've learned from the documents and stories. I think there's a part of the past that we haven't uncovered yet, something that might change how we see everything. I want to understand it, to know the full story before I make sense of the rest of my life." The mother nodded slowly, understanding the urgency and wisdom behind the words. She had always feared that the past would come back to haunt them, that the choices she had made would be misunderstood. But here was her child, ready to face the truth, ready to see beyond the surface, ready to embrace the complexity of love, sacrifice, and life itself. And so they began, cautiously, patiently, to unravel the threads of the past. The daughter asked questions about the man she had saved, about the circumstances surrounding her birth, about the people who had influenced the choices her mother had made. The mother answered honestly, revealing the fears, hopes, and motivations behind each decision. She spoke of nights spent crying in the dark, of mornings filled with worry and uncertainty, of the relentless pressure to do the right thing, even when it felt impossible. As the story unfolded, the daughter began to piece together the full picture. She realized that her life had been shaped not just by circumstance, but by the extraordinary acts of love that had surrounded her. She understood that the sacrifices made had been painful, but also transformative, creating a life she could never have imagined, yet one that carried the imprint of her mother's heart in every detail. Through these conversations, their bond deepened further. They laughed, they cried, and they shared quiet moments of reflection that spoke louder than words. The mother marveled at the person her child had become, while the daughter admired the strength and courage that had defined her mother's life. Together they built a connection that was both tender and resilient, a bridge between past and present, loss and love, pain and hope. Yet, even as they grew closer, a sense of anticipation lingered. The daughter felt it deep within her, feeling that there was still more to discover, a revelation waiting to emerge that could change everything they had learned so far. The mother sensed it too, a quiet tension in the air, a hint that the story of their lives was not yet complete. Both women knew that their journey together had only just begun, and that the coming days would bring truths, challenges, and discoveries that would test the strength of their bond and the depth of their love. They continued to prepare, together, but cautiously, for the moment when the final pieces of the puzzle would come to light. And though they did not yet know the full scope of the revelation ahead, they faced it with courage, love, and the unbreakable connection that had grown between them. The reunion had been more than a meeting. It had been the start of understanding, healing, and the slow but steady rebuilding of a bond that time, distance, and hardship had never truly broken. The days after the daughter's arrival passed in a mixture of discovery, quiet moments, and small joys. Both women had begun to settle into a new rhythm, one where laughter mingled with tears and questions were met with honest answers. They had grown closer than either had imagined, yet beneath the surface, a feeling lingered, a sense that the full story, the reason everything had unfolded the way it did, had yet to reveal itself. One afternoon, the daughter received a call from the family lawyer. Her heart skipped a beat. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, but it carried a weight that made her uneasy. "There are documents and letters you need to see," the lawyer said. "Your adoptive father left them behind. They were meant for you." The daughter felt a mix of curiosity and fear. She thanked the lawyer and promised to come immediately. Something in her chest told her that this was the moment when long-hidden truths would come to light. She walked to the office with the mother beside her, step heavy with anticipation. The lawyer handed her a thick folder, carefully labeled and tied with a ribbon. She opened it slowly, as though handling fragile glass, her fingers trembling. The first papers were legal documents, confirming the adoption, but the next set of letters revealed more. They were written by her adoptive father, addressed to her, but never delivered. They spoke of the reasons behind the adoption, the intentions behind the financial support, and the care that had been taken to ensure her safety and future. As she read, her eyes widened. The letters explained that the adoption had not been a simple transaction. Her biological mother had not sold her in the way she had feared. Instead, her adoptive father had been aware of the mother's difficult situation and had made an arrangement to protect both the mother and the child. The money given was not a purchase, but a safety net, a way to ensure the child would have a life filled with security, education, and opportunity. While the mother could survive a period of desperate hardship, every word painted a picture of thoughtfulness, care, and love that had been hidden beneath layers of fear and misunderstanding. Tears welled in the daughter's eyes. As she looked at her mother, "Do you see this?" she whispered. "It wasn't what I thought. It wasn't just a trade. They were trying to protect both of us. They wanted me to have a life, and they wanted to make sure you were safe too." The mother's hand shook as she reached for the letters. She read slowly, disbelief and relief mingling in her eyes. I never knew," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought I had failed you. I thought I had lost you forever. All these years, I carried that weight." The daughter embraced her mother tightly. "You didn't fail me," she said. "You gave me life. You gave me love. You made the hardest choice a human being can make, and because of that, I am here. Because of that, I exist, and because of that, I am who I am." The mother's tears fell freely, washing away years of guilt, fear, and sorrow. She had lived with the memory of loss every single day. And now, for the first time, she understood that her sacrifice had not been in vain. She had given life to her child, and had acted out of love, not neglect. And the daughter, who had spent years wondering about the choices that shaped her life, now had the answers she had longed for. As they continued to read through the letters, they discovered more details. The adoptive father had known about the man the mother loved and the illness that had threatened his life. He had respected the mother's wishes, honored her courage, and ensured that the child would be raised with love, dignity, and every opportunity she deserved. He had also included letters of encouragement, advice for life, and reminders that she could come to him, and later to the mother, whenever she needed answers. Every page spoke of care, foresight, and a deep understanding of human fragility. The daughter sat back, overwhelmed by the realization of how carefully her life had been protected even before she knew it. "All these years I thought I was missing something," she said. "But now I see that love was there the entire time. You gave me life, and they gave me a life full of possibilities. I can't believe I didn't understand it sooner." The mother nodded, holding her daughter's hand tightly. "We both survived," she said softly. "You survived in a world I could not give you, and I survived knowing you were safe. We both carried the weight of the past, but we made it through. And now we have each other." In the days that followed, they began to rebuild their connection in a new way, grounded in understanding and clarity. They shared meals, went for walks, and talked about hopes for the future. The daughter expressed her desire to help her mother, to provide support, and to ensure she would never feel the kind of struggle that had marked her early life. The mother, in turn, expressed gratitude, humility, and a quiet pride in the person her child had become. One evening, sitting together on the small porch of the mother's house, they watched the sun dip below the horizon. The daughter turned to her mother. "I want you to come with me," she said. "I want you to be part of my life, not just the past. I want us to live fully together now, to create new memories, not just remember the old ones." The mother smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "I would like that very much," she said. "I never imagined this day would come. I never imagined that we could find each other, understand each other, and move forward together. But here we are, and I am ready." Plans began to take shape. The daughter wanted her mother to visit the city where she had grown up, to meet friends, explore opportunities, and experience the life she had missed. She wanted to introduce her mother not as someone from the past, but as someone who mattered in the present and future. The mother, hesitant at first, agreed, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had spent decades in quiet solitude, never imagining that her child would one day return with love, understanding, and the promise of a shared life. As they prepared for this next chapter, both women felt a sense of closure mixed with anticipation. The years of separation, the unanswered questions, the fears, and the doubts had all been replaced by clarity, connection, and hope. They had faced the truth together, confronted the misunderstandings, and discovered the depth of love that had always existed between them. On the day of departure, the daughter and mother packed lightly, carrying not just belongings, but also the emotional weight of their journey. As they stood outside the small house, ready to leave for a future full of possibilities, the mother turned to her daughter. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for finding me. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for giving me a second chance at being your mother." The daughter smiled, tears streaming down her face. "No," she said. "Thank you. Thank you for giving me life, for making the hardest choice, and for still being here for me. We both had to endure so much, but now we have each other, and that is more than enough." They embraced once more, long and tightly, feeling the strength of their bond, the relief of understanding, and the quiet joy of reunion. In that moment, the past no longer felt like a burden. It felt like a foundation, a story of love, sacrifice, and resilience that had shaped both of their lives in ways neither could have predicted, as they drove away from the small town. The daughter glanced at her mother, who was staring out the window, eyes wide with wonder and quiet amazement. The daughter felt a deep sense of gratitude, knowing that their journey was not over, but that they were ready for whatever the future held. They had faced the impossible, discovered truths long hidden, and rebuilt a bond that time, distance, and hardship had never truly broken. In the days and months that followed, they began to weave their lives together. The mother learned to navigate the world her daughter had grown up in, while the daughter embraced the lessons, stories, and wisdom her mother had carried for decades. Together, they discovered that love could survive even the harshest trials. That sacrifice could be a gift rather than a loss, and that understanding could turn pain into connection. The shocking news had brought them together. But it was their shared courage, empathy, and love that allowed them to stay together, to rebuild what had been lost, and to create a future filled with hope, joy, and the certainty that some bonds are stronger than time, distance, or circumstance, and in the quiet moments. When they sat together and reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point, both mother and daughter understood one profound truth. Love, in all its forms, can endure. Love can make impossible choices possible. Love can heal wounds thought permanent. And love, even when tested by heartbreak and separation, can ultimately bring people back to where they belong together, whole. And finally at peace, the story of their reunion became a testament to the power of love, sacrifice, and understanding, a story they would carry with them forever. A story of a mother and daughter whose bond had survived every obstacle, every challenge, and every uncertainty. And as they looked forward to the life ahead, they knew one thing with absolute certainty: the hardest choices can sometimes lead to the most beautiful beginnings.